Welcome to the Happy Lawyer Project. I'm your host, Akoma Moronu, and I created this show to help lawyers find happiness in life with a law degree. Together with my guests, we provide the knowledge, skills, insight, inspiration you need to find your happy. And on today's show, I chat with Dina Eisenberg about the power of delegating and outsourcing to create space for more joy in your life. So Dina is a former attorney who had a life-changing moment that led her to transition out of the practice of law and into a business helping lawyers earn more, do more, and enjoy more of their lives through outsourcing. On today's show, she shares her personal story for the very first time. We dive into the specifics of how to outsource efficiently, and we even tackle the mistakes that people are making. So whether you use this in your professional life or in your personal life, whether you're a solo practitioner or you're still at a firm, I think that learning how to delegate is such a key skill in capturing back some of those precious hours of your life. So I really, really hope you guys enjoy the show. Welcome to the Happy Lawyer Project. You guys, I am so excited to introduce you to today's guest. I'd love everybody to welcome Dina Eisenberg to the show. Welcome, Dina.
I am so delighted to be here. I've been looking forward to talking with you. And I always enjoy talking about delegation.
This is a topic that I really love, and it's something that is really core to how I found happiness. So before we dive into that, why don't you start with a brief description of who you are and what it is that you do?
Cool. I love giving people the 50-cent tour. So I am Dina Eisenberg. I'm a lawyer turned award-winning entrepreneur and CEO of outsourceeasier.com. That's a coaching and consulting firm for successful lawyers. What I help lawyers do really is to create a sustainable, profitable, joyous law practice. These are lawyers who, are really hard workers. They have a vision and a goal, and they're successful. They grinded to get to where they're at. But then they realize, I don't want to grind so much in the future. I want to enjoy my life a little bit more, and I want to practice in a different way. And what I help them do is clarify their vision and then get the confidence to really outsource so they can enjoy life again.
So while your focus does seem to be on entrepreneurial or, solo practitioners, I do think that the idea of developing a lifestyle around your legal practice and delegating, outsourcing work, and understanding what the vision is for your career really applies to everybody.
I totally agree with that. I think no matter where you are in your law career or your law business, because that's how I think of it, there's an opportunity for you to impact more people and do more if you learn how to outsource and delegate. And that's the real focus of things. When you're really being true to your purpose and helping more people, I think you're generally happier.
So how did you fall into this niche? Because it's a very specific area to coach.
It is. It's true. People don't go out to say, hey, you know what? I want to grow up being an outsourcing strategist. But it's really kind of a personal journey, and I'm going to be honest here. I haven't shared my story publicly before, so I'm a little nervous about it, but I'm glad that I'm doing it with you. So my work really grew out of a personal tragedy. I was running my own consulting firm, and I got tapped to be the corporate ombudsman for a multinational bank in the U.S. And I was used to doing everything on my own. And so I was taking myself out to the copier. I was planning my own travel. I was doing all kinds of things. And one day my assistant came into my office and closed the door and had a come to Jesus talk with me. And basically she said, you are ruining both our reputations. And I was shocked, but I listened. And she told me that, my colleagues, which were other very senior executives in the organization, were starting to question whether I knew what my job was or whether I was suited to it because I deigned to go to the copier. And they thought, you have 60,000 employees that are looking to you for guidance. Copying is not something you're supposed to be doing. her colleagues were saying, are you lazy? Why is your executive, planning her own trips and asking other people for advice around that? You're not doing your job. And so she really helped me understand that even though I liked being independent, I was going to be much more effective if we worked together as a team, and that I delegated more things to her. And so she helped me learn how to be a good delegation partner. And of course, she was right. I got a lot more work done. I impacted a lot more lives because I was able to focus on my core capabilities and really guide employees well, because I wasn't thinking about, I don't want to say the minutia, but the smaller things around that. So I came, out of being an ombuds back to private practice with that mindset. I need to have a team. And so I put one around me. My husband was running his own business, running $1 million business. My business was in six figures. And I tried to convince him, get a team, hire someone to help you, bring somebody in, because he was doing really well, but he was overworked. And he gave all the excuses that I hear lawyers give now, which are, it just takes too long to explain to somebody else. I don't have that kind of time. I need to do it myself because it has to be done right, and I really can't trust anybody. And then the biggest one was, he would say, why would I pay somebody else to do the things that I could do? And I really just couldn't convince him. One night, we were sleeping, and he sneezed. Now, everybody sneezes. But in this particular instance, he ruptured 2 discs in his back and had to be rushed to the hospital for emergency surgery. He was 90 minutes away from being paralyzed for life.
Oh, my.
He came out of the surgery, thankfully, okay, but that began a 2-year recovery period where he had to learn how to use the bathroom, walk, take care of himself all over again. About a week into his recovery, I was getting all kinds of phone calls from his corporate clients. And they were saying things like, where is this document? When are we going to have this meeting? And I wasn't in his business. So I really didn't have a response for them. And they were like, okay, we're so sorry he's ill. Wish him all the best. But now we're going to work with somebody else because he's unreliable. He doesn't have a team to support him. And, we need our deliverables. And I knew plenty of lawyers who had said exactly the same thing, that they didn't want to spend the money, that they were worried about having mistakes in their practice, so they didn't want to open it up to having someone to come in and help them, that they didn't have any systems in place, God forbid, something should happen to them, and their family would suffer because they were the only income generator in their family. And so I knew I just didn't want anybody else to go through the stress that I was put under. And I thought, okay, so now you're going to form this company, Outsource Easier, and you're really going to make lawyers aware that they need to have help, that it's okay to get the help. And in fact, if they're not doing it, they're putting their family at risk.
First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing that story. I think it really puts a context around your passion for what you do. And before we move on, I want to ask, how is your husband today? How did it all work out?
Yeah, I would love to say they had a happy ending. So he recovered fully from his physical illness, but he lost his business. It was never the same again. Yep. And he lost his wife because he couldn't wrap his mind around the fact that he needed to protect his family as part of running his business.
Yep. Wow. That's a tough lesson, but I think it really is a lesson. And it's interesting because I think that we often think of women as being bad at delegating, as women, as the ones who are, and I try to not to make these types of gendered, comments about women being like this, men being like that. Women are really bad at delegating, but men are really good at using their secretaries. And you realize this is a problem that affects everybody, and it's really driven by a lot of internal kind of obstacles and challenges.
I so agree with that. It's the mindset thing, right? So, as lawyers, we're kind of trained and conditioned in law school to think that work and overwhelm is the norm. I don't know about you, but I got used to working all hours of the night doing my reading and working on briefs and doing those kinds of things. I got used to being hungry and tired and sleepy and just pushing through that because work had to be done. And so I didn't see myself as someone who needed help, with the air quotes, needed help. And I don't think most lawyers think of themselves as needing or wanting help. We have this terrible, terrible idea that I call glorified toughness.
Yep.
So that if you're not like practically killing yourself every day because you're overworked, you have so many things to do, you're wearing that busy badge so proudly, then you're not a real lawyer.
That's exactly it, the busy badge. That's what I was literally thinking about, is that because even if people knew that they could delegate, if it meant that they would have free time, they wouldn't do it. I'm sorry to interrupt, but that was literally what I was thinking.
No worries. We're having this conversation. I've just seen that happen over and over again. People like bragging about how busy they are. I'm like, now let's think about the logic of that, because it really doesn't make any sense. If you're online bragging about how busy you are, I think two things about you. You don't have enough self-awareness to know that you need the help, and maybe you have low emotional intelligence because you're not reaching out to get the help. And I wonder about your marketing skills, because essentially you're telling people, I'm too busy to do a good job for you. Like, did you want to be saying that? Would you rather, engage a team who can support you so that you could focus on the more important things? Like, I don't know, practicing law?
It's so fascinating because I think anybody who's well-read today and not knows that it's not possible to do 8, 12, 14 hours a day of deep work.
Yeah.
It's just, that's not the way the human brain is designed. That's not how we function. It's just not possible. And even if you look historically, some of the greatest thinkers of our, lifetimes of the planet, they thought in like 2 to 4 hour blocks. And so we're trying to say that we think we should bill our clients for deep work or legal work that's at hundreds of dollars an hour that we are claiming we can do sustainably for 8, 10, 12 hours a day. It just feels like BS.
Yeah, it's just not possible. And what the nice thing about it is that science is bearing that out now. So there are studies that talk about context switching, which is kind of like your brain on multitasking. And what happens is every time you shift to a new task, because, we're famous for saying, oh, it'll only take me 5 minutes to do that, right? And I'll get back to what I was doing. Every time you shift, it's the 5 minutes, but it's also 20 more minutes as your brain readjusts back to the tasks that you were doing. So over the course of an 8-hour day, you might lose up to 2 hours because you wouldn't focus on one thing. There's a new study that came out, a brain science study, that said that really we're beginning to give ourselves brain damage because of that, because all the switching back and forth trains your brain to accept distraction easier. And so it makes it harder and far harder for you to actually sustain critical thinking for more than a few minutes, because you're training your brain to look for that distraction because it's almost always there.
That's so terrifying. So currently as an in-house counsel, I'm a consumer of legal services.
Yeah.
And that's definitely one thing that I look for in my billing. And one of the things that I talk to my relationship partners about all the time is if they have associates who are working on my transactions, who are billing 8, 10-hour days, who are mid-senior level associates, I tell them they need to staff my deals better.
Yeah. You have to, because you're not getting the quality of work. You're getting something, but it's not quality.
Exactly. And I'm paying for their exhaustion. I'm paying for their inefficiencies. And it's not my job to manage their billables, nor is it my job to manage the way they run their firm. But it is my job to manage my budget. And when I see inefficiency like that, I have to call it out.
We're at a turning point, a transition point. I think people are beginning to recognize that they have to make those adjustments because clients are demanding it. More efficiency and better quality work.
So let's transition a little to what you actually do to help people, because I think that people want to delegate, but often they wait too late, I think. People wait until they're almost split in half before they're like, I could probably use some help. Because
Yes.
it's scary to make that investment when you're not sure how you're going to pay for it.
I cannot believe you just said that. That is one of the things that really drives the conversation. So people think that they're being virtuous, right? Because if you're not making as much money as you would like to be making, it seems very virtuous not to spend the money on something that you could do yourself. I totally understand that. But then folks don't take the next step and think about that critically, thinking, okay, so I'm going to do this myself, which means that if it's not a regular task I have to do, I have to learn to do it. There's the investment of time. If I'm doing it, they're probably not going to be the highest level of output because it's not my regular thing. I don't know everything about it. So you're not going to get the same quality of work. And then you might not use it because it's like, it's not great. I don't necessarily want somebody to, see this. So you wasted all this time and energy and money when it's going to be much more effective to hire somebody else. So a good example of that is, and I just hate this tool, Canva. So lawyers will jump onto Canva to make a graphic and spend 2 hours doing it. Well, 2 hours when you're, billing at the national average is like $250, $260. So that's $500 that you spent. And the graphic is never going to look the same as a graphic designer did it. And then the time is just gone. You lost the opportunity to do something else. Why not just hire a virtual assistant who specializes in graphics, who's going to cost you maybe $45, $75 an hour? She does it day in, day out. She knows the fonts, the colors, how to create excitement in a way that you don't. And she's going to do a so much better job. And then you still have that 2 hours that you could spend on generating income or doing legal research or just generally lawyering, knowing that you're going to get outcome that's better and you still preserved your time. That, to me, that's a lot less expensive than you sort of sitting down on Canva and just sort of pushing through trying to get something done.
I completely agree. And I am definitely struggle with that. Even with my website, I tried to add a page to my website and I tried for 6 months to add it and then finally reached out to the person who built my website and took her 45 minutes. Mm-hmm. And it was ridiculous. I don't know why I waited that long to reach out, and I just felt like I should have been able to do it.
That's the reason why you waited. That's the reason why people wait so long to delegate. They're like, I'm smart. I went to law school. I should be able to do it. But the question really should be, who has superior knowledge? If it's not something about the law, you don't have superior knowledge. There will be somebody else who can do it better than you for less money. So let them.
So what are the limits around that? Because obviously, when you give examples like that, it seems obvious. You should delegate, you should build a team. But there's also this fear, at least the fear that I have, is that I now have a specialist for everything. I have this ginormous team that I can't even keep busy, let alone pay.
Yeah. People do get concerned about that. And so, one of the ways I try to help my clients sort of manage that is that we really think about what has to be outsourced and what doesn't. That's the first thing. So not everything has to be outsourced. There's some things that you probably have someone on the team that's available to you now that can do some of those things. And the other thing is picking quality talent, which is what I call freelancers, who have more than one skill. Like I try very hard not to let someone hire somebody who only has one skill. We want multiple skills because it's an investment of time for them to learn your business, right? And how you think and how you do things and what's important to you. So once you've invested that time training the talent, I want them to do more than one thing in my business. So, if I have a writer, I don't just want them to be someone who writes my Facebook ads. I want them to be able to write my web copy. I want them to be able to write email marketing for me and do a bunch of things. So the investment is well used, and I'm only managing that one person. I think when you get multiple teammates, you get to a point where then you need to have what I would call your number one. I'm a big Star Trek fan. So you know how Captain Picard had number one, and he would just say to number one, make it so. At some point, you need to get to that. If you're having multiple teammates, talent that you're working with, you need to get a number one who you say, here are my goals for the week or the month or the quarter. Here's what we need to get accomplished. You now manage the teammates and make it so.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you make it all sound so easy. And I think that one of the things you did say that people often overlook, and I want to dive into a little more here, is taking the time to train people.
Yeah.
And not just train how to do things, but how you like things done.
Yep. That is a big issue. You know, it harkens back to what you said earlier about people waiting so long. So often people will come to me with their hair on fire practically saying, I need somebody now. I just got to hire somebody. And I understand that because now the pressure is really serious and they see what's falling off their plate or not getting done and they want the help. But when you hire immediately, what you miss is the process. Delegation is not hard, but it is a step-by-step process. Some of the earlier steps are critical to getting great outcome. One of those steps is really being very clear on what the goal is. Oftentimes we ask for the help and we're not certain what either the goal is or what a successful outcome looks like. And I see that all the time when people say, oh, I delegated, but I didn't get back what I wanted. And when we delve a little further and I ask them some questions, it's clear they didn't know what they wanted when they started. And so if you don't know, you can't communicate that to somebody else to help you. And you can never be sure that what they gave you is the right thing because you never told them. So you have to be clear about what your goal is. Second thing you have to do is what I call the pre-go process. And that is really just getting ready to turn over the work. So when you're going to go on a long trip, right, you're thinking about, you don't just hop in the car and go, right? There are a couple of things you do beforehand. You think about where you want to go. You get the map, you buy your snacks, you gas up the car, and then you're ready to go. Same thing when you're beginning to delegate with talent. You have to do the pre-go, which means that you have to understand the steps of the task that you're delegating. You have to understand why it's important, what you want them to do, what you don't want them to do, and help them think about your rationale about how you think about that project. The more time and effort you spend on the pre-go and writing what I call the project legend, which is just a standard operating procedure on steroids that you can hand to this person and say, there you go, here's what I want, read that, and if you have questions, come back to me. The more time you spend on those two pieces, the better your outcome gets. But lawyers are impatient. They just want to be like, okay, I want this now. And so that's where I often see people making their mistake. They don't do the earlier steps to prepare themselves and the other person to get the outcome that they're expecting.
So I'm having a little bit of, I get this resistance when you talk about that because I know I love to delegate things that have clear goals and clear process because then it's easy for me to hand it over. But I start to feel a lot of resistance around things that are my process because it makes me feel bossy.
Okay, let's unpack that a little bit.
Yep. So, but you know what I mean? Like, there's a way I like people to respond to emails. I know that that's not how you have to respond to an email. So, like, I want to give them some freedom to be who they are and blah, all that kind of stuff. I almost said and blah, blah, blah. You can tell how much I actually want it. But at the end of the day, just send the email the way I wrote it.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is not bossy. That is leading, right? You're leading that person to get the outcome that you want. Because the way that I define outsourcing and delegation is outsourcing is asking someone to help you achieve a goal. Delegation is telling them specifically how to help you. So it's not bossy. You're actually making it easier for them to do it. And if they have pushback, it's not like you're like a dictator, like you could never deviate. What you're saying is, this is the best way for me to have you achieve this goal of helping me. If you have feedback, give me the feedback because maybe I'll shift. But, generally it's going to be done this way, and here's why.
Yeah, the here's why I think is key. I think that helps me feel like justifying myself always makes me feel better.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I think a lot of people leave out of their equation is context and authority. So adults work better when they understand context. They understand how their piece of the puzzle fits in and what their contribution does to the whole. So I'm always encouraging people, give folks context when you give them a task, when you're delegating, so they know that they're just not twiddling their thumbs, that they're an integral part of having something happen. The other piece is the authority. You have to give people authority to actually do stuff, which I know is hard, but it makes a difference. If you don't want someone to come back to you repeatedly to ask for directions, you need to give them the authority to make a decision. So a good example of that is when I got married. I got married in a beautiful Victorian mansion, a historic building. It even had its own ghost. And so I wanted the evening to be very romantic and moody. And so I wanted candlelight and roses every place. So I said to my florist, okay, here's what I want it to feel like. Here's what I want it to look like. Now you go off and you make that happen. And so I filled her in on all the details. When I showed up that night for the wedding, the mansion was beautiful. It was a blazing candlelight. Everybody looked great, but there wasn't a single candle in the place. He was like, what? Well, what happened was the fire marshal informed her that you can't have an open flame in a historic building. But because she knew the context, what I wanted, and I gave her authority, she was able to create the end result that I wanted without having to come back to me. And that's the thing I would encourage people to think about. Give your talent, whoever it is, enough context and authority so they don't necessarily have to come back to you to ask you different questions. Give them the project legend, which is the explanation of how to do it, so they don't have to come back to you. So you're not feeling like you have to manage them so much, that you really can take it off of your brain and turn that bandwidth to something else.
So that leads to my next question quite nicely. How do you advise people delegate or identify talent in a skill set they don't have?
Ooh, that's actually a very good question, because it means that you have to trust, right?
Correct. So like the Canva example, like if you're not a graphic designer, it would be hard for you to know what you should be looking for or how to tell a high skilled from a medium skilled from a low skill if people are pricing correctly. And it can just feel really overwhelming and like you're going to get taken advantage of.
Yep. And then that leads to all kinds of researching.
Absolutely.
And then you're like, well, I'm going to do it myself.
Correct. I could just be done by now.
That's right. That's right. Totally understand that. It's about trusting yourself, right? That you are going to be able to sort and make a good decision. Lawyers are smart. We have the ability to discern. So you will be able to tell someone who does mediocre work from someone who does great work. One of the things I encourage people to do, particularly around graphic art stuff, is look at the portfolio first. If the portfolio is not moving you, it doesn't excite you, it's not the image or branding that you want to portray, that's not your person. That is not your person. Move on to the next portfolio. You have an innate ability to decipher what's going to work for you or not. And the question is whether or not you trust yourself to make the good decision.
Yeah, there's definitely something there about going with your gut. I think that I have a tendency, because I don't trust myself, to go cheap, because then the mistake is not as bad. You know what I mean? Like then I didn't waste as much time.
Yeah. Can I encourage you to do something else around that then? Because that's something I see a lot in clients is like they want to go to the, we're talking about resources and talent and where to get them. And they always want to go to the least expensive person. And my response to that is, if you're choosing the cheapest person, you're actually going to cost yourself more money at the back end, right? Somebody who is very low priced is usually going to be a little bit lower skilled or newer to doing the work, which means that you are going to have to invest the time to manage them. They're going to be a technician, not an expert. And part, at least from my perspective, part of delegating is finding experts who bring value to your work. right? So I'd rather pay a little bit more to have someone who is going to be an expert, who's actually going to give me direction and bring new ideas to the party. So a good example of that is the first time I wanted to use a transcriptionist. I had no clue who, not only about how it worked or what to hire or how expensive. I had none at all. And I went on to Upwork and I started looking at different profiles, and I found someone that was kind of expensive, but I thought, okay, I'm going to engage with her. And it was the best idea because I said to her, quite honestly, I've never done this before. And she literally took me by the hand virtually and explained the different levels of transcription and what level my project was actually at. Right. And then because I had lots of transcription to do, she gave me a deal. So I learned so much about hiring out for that work, in addition to getting a deal on getting my work done. That's why I think it's okay to spend a little bit more money on someone who's an expert, because they're going to enhance your knowledge going forward.
So I think perhaps in addition to trusting your gut, there is something there also about realizing it's a growing and learning experience for yourself. So failure may be part of that, and that's not, you don't try once, you did a bad job, go back to doing your own Canva. You try once, you learn what you need to do better next time, and you realize that it's worth the investment to do this learning around selecting talent.
That's absolutely right. So like for me, there's 8 steps to delegation, and the last step is the debrief. What worked? What didn't work? What did I learn from this process? The next time you can incorporate that information so that you do a better job. It is a learning process. And mainly what you're learning is about yourself, right? How do I make trust? What do I need to see in somebody else so that I think they are trustworthy? How do I communicate? Am I a clear communicator, or am I a little less clear and I need to work on being detailed and specific in the information that I share? How do I accept problems? Am I somebody who, once there's a problem, I need to take it back because only I can fix that? Or am I somebody who can listen to my talent and accept their opinions or thoughts about how things get fixed? Right? Those are all learnings, and you don't learn them all in one project. You learn them over the course of projects.
And even though we've been talking about outsourcing in the context of, hiring creative talent, I think that literally what you said would work just as well for working with junior associates for the first time. I think
it's absolutely.
That can be so challenging because you never know what you're going to get when you get a junior associate. And
can I talk a little bit about that?
Of course.
Okay, so I actually think that delegation is a great opportunity for personal development and developing your team, right? From the lawyer's standpoint, as the associate or senior partner, it takes some emotional intelligence for you to understand what you need. So you have to have some self-awareness, and then look at other people and figure out what they need, which is social awareness. So in delegating, you grow your own emotional intelligence skills. In working with somebody else and communicating that project and doing it in a way that they can understand and grow in it, that builds that trust between the two of you, right? Because it's not you just dictating. It should be like a partnership. Like, we have this project to do. Here's my part. I'm helping you understand what needs to get done. Here's your part. You're doing it. And then, seeing how that person accepts feedback or takes the initiative, and then shaping that so they understand a little bit better how to interact in your environment and how to support somebody else. That's pretty important.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I was just remembering how lucky I was to be trained by attorneys who were really, really, really focused on the importance of only doing work at your level. And so the only way that works is if you delegate. If you're not delegating down junior work, you're billing junior work, and then you get, reprimanded. Not reprimanded, but you definitely would there would be a conversation had about your ability to manage at your level. And so that was always something that was ingrained in my practice. And so it's very interesting because when it comes to my personal life, I very much struggle, but it's the same concept. And so I'm just doing a little bit of self-work here to figure out.
It is the same concept. I mean, I think you have to think of it as sort of a team building. exercise when you're delegating down, right? You do your best work when you are focused on what you do best, and you need to build a team that supports you to do that, right? And that means that you have to delegate, which is teach somebody else to do things that now are not your work. And it's hard to let go, and particularly when you're successful at something, it's hard to let that go because it's like, will I be successful at the new thing I pick up? I'd rather hold on to the thing I'm doing great now. But that's the evolution, right? Delegation helps you evolve into a better person and a better leader if you let it. Not everybody does. Some people just hold on to micromanaging and they can't let go, which is unfortunate because really all that signals to other people is that you don't trust yourself and you don't want anybody else to know what you know.
It's so interesting because nobody likes to work with a micromanager. And I've never met anybody who's like, wow, that person is really good at leading because they micromanage, Like that's a cool way to do this. Like no one's ever said that, yet we fall into these traps in little ways just because when there's a cognitive dissonance because when it's you, there's a justifiable reason for it. But objectively, we know that that's not the way you want to lead.
Yeah, I think you just hit the nail on the head with that. When it's other people, we can clearly see it. When it's us, it's harder to see.
All right, well, I could talk to you about this forever, but I want to respect your time. And so I want to move on to the next segment of the show, which is a new segment. And I'm going to apologize to you because I'm going to ask you a question that wasn't on the list, but we're going to see how you do here. And so these are intended to kind of be quick fire questions. I just want to get your impulse reaction to them because these are the questions people always want to know about my guest. And I can never fit them all in. So I'm going to try and do it in every episode and see how it goes. So here we go.
Okay, let's go.
First question, how do you deal with failure or disappointment?
I think that failure is an experiment, right? We get too attached to getting the right answer. And so I personally have tried to think of it as I'm trying this and we'll see what happens. So that when I fail, it's not like, oh, it was a failure. It's like, that didn't work. Let's move on to the other thing that might work.
Fantastic. So what do you do or how do you prioritize your own happiness?
Ooh, you know what? I try to make it central to everyday life. I think people think of happiness as something they're going to attain in the future, but I think that you can have joy every day. Joy is always available if you're looking for it. And so every day I'm looking for something that I can be joyful about.
I love that. And I completely agree. So here's the question. So number 3 is, what was a mindset shift that really changed your life?
Ooh, that's a biggie. I think the mindset shift that really changed my life is that I don't need anybody else's permission to do what I want to do.
Oh, I love that.
I have lived a very unconventional life with an unconventional law practice because it worked for me. And in lots of ways, there are other people who didn't let me do things that I wanted to do. So I did the other things that I wanted to do. And sometimes we forget, you don't need anybody's permission. It's your life. You're the only one leading it. And so when I get to this place where I'm comparing myself to other people and I'm like, it's just not working the same, I have to remind myself, you don't have their life. And you have permission to have your own life and have it work the way that you want it to work.
I love that. And it's something that lawyers across the board struggle with, I think, as rule-oriented type A people, because we want to know what the rules are and we want to know if we're allowed to do it.
Yes, that's exactly it. So I'm just telling everybody right now, you have permission to do what you want to do. If other people don't like that, that's fine. They're not living your life.
Absolutely. Next, what is a book that really inspires you?
Ooh, now see, this is a hard question because I'm a book gal.
Oh, me too, which is why I love
books. I would say that Small Giants by Bo Burlingham was one of the first books that taught me that I could create a business and a practice that worked for me, and I didn't have to take anybody else into consideration. I think that the book Daring to Lead by Brené Brown has been so important because she delves into the fact that sometimes we lead unconsciously from fear, and just having the awareness of that is enough to pull people back onto the right path.
Great choices. I'm excited about this question. I used to have it on the show and I took it out because I felt like we were getting a lot of the same answers, but I'm back on board because I need more book suggestions. And last question for the segment is, what do you think separates lawyers who are happy from lawyers who struggle to find happiness in life with a law degree?
I think what separates it is a sense of self-awareness, curiosity, and grit. The way I think about it is, if you are determined to live a happy life and you're curious about how that could happen, you're happier. You're not just following behind everybody else. You are okay with going your own way and seeing what happens. And so for lawyers who just can't make that leap to, I'm doing my own thing, they lead a little bit less happier life, kind of like crabs in a barrel. Everybody else is just pulling them down. But if you're willing to explore and experiment what uniquely makes you happy, then I think, you can't be beat. I
love that. Agreed. And you have to take your happiness into your own hands. And I think so many people delegate. They outsource their happiness. And that's one thing you really can't do.
I love that. I'm now going to start saying that.
Okay, so now before we wrap up, another thing I'm trying to do is involve more listeners in the show. And so I got a question from a listener about delegation and outsourcing. She is a solo practitioner. Her name is Ashley, and she's trying to start her own firm, and she wants to make one hire. What would that hire be?
Ooh, I love this question. So Ashley, I think the very first hire, there's two. I think there are 5 essential teammates you need to have on a law firm. You need to have a virtual assistant, you need to have a writer, you need to have a financial team, which includes your bookkeeper, your accountant, and your wealth advisor. You need your own lawyer, because lawyers should not lawyer for themselves. And then you need to have a tech person. So I would say the very first hires from a marketing standpoint are going to be your writer and your virtual assistant. Your very first hires from a business perspective is going to be your financial team.
I love that. And I think that if you can find a VA who can kind of moonlight and cover in the interim, as you're saying about dual skill sets, that might be a good first step.
Right, because if people can't find you or you can't convey your value, it's harder to get clients. So if you find a great virtual assistant who is good at writing copy and understands what you do, she's going to be golden for you.
Yeah, time and money well spent figuring that out.
Yeah. But bravo for asking that question, because it's the right question to ask at the beginning of your law practice. Lots of folks start out, think, I can't bring anybody in. And that's the great thing about outsourcing online, because there's always somebody at the various budget points to help you. So if you have a low budget, there's going to be someone to help you. Midline budget, going to be someone to help you. If you have a high budget, there's always going to be someone to help you. So you can afford it. And the nice thing is that when you don't have the money, you just don't use that person.
Yeah, you don't have to put anybody on payroll.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And before I let you go, what's the best way for people to learn more about your services and follow your work?
I would love to connect with people on Twitter. If they're on Facebook, I run a free mastermind called the Intentional Lawyers Club, where we talk about all these kinds of issues in terms of growing your practice and using outsourcing and delegation to do it. And if you're a LinkedIn person, hit me up there.
Fantastic. And I will include the links to all of those on the show notes for this episode at thehappylawyerproject.com. So if you guys are out on a run, at the gym, whatever the case may be, you can head over to the website to get links and find Dina. Thank you so much, Dina, for being on the show tonight. It was really great to connect with you finally.
It has been my pleasure. I'm so glad to talk about this topic. So glad to meet you. Really appreciated having such a fun and informative conversation. Thank you for asking me.
Thanks so much for listening. And if you got value out of this episode and you think there's someone else who might enjoy it, I'd love for you guys to share. And if you have any questions for me, please head over to the website at thehappylawyerproject.com and you can leave me a voicemail right on the website. When you get there, you'll see a little tab on the right hand of the screen and you can click on it and leave a voicemail there. I absolutely love hearing from you guys. Last but not least, if you enjoy this podcast and you like the content that I'm bringing to you guys and you haven't done so already, I would really encourage you guys to head over to Apple Podcasts and leave me a rating and review. That's all for this week. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening.